Good afternoon, one and all. A very warm welcome to the panel discussion on ideas and solutions for real-time fraud management in FinSec 2022. Today we have Mr. Niranjan Upadhye with us, who is the General Manager and Head Worldline India PVT Limited, who will be the moderating this session. I welcome you, sir. I welcome Mr. Rushi Mehta, Cybersecurity Consultant, I foresee Ministry of Home and Affairs. I welcome you. I welcome Mr. Karthik Bappanad, Center Head, CySecK, Karnataka. I welcome
Okay.
I welcome Mr. Sudeep Das, Pre-Sales Manager, Tenable, India. So I welcome you as well. So once again, a very warm welcome to the panelists and the participants. So over to the moderator. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Niranjan, and today I will be moderating this session with our illustrious panelists. It's a matter of honor, and they are all domain experts and subject matter experts with a vast level of experience. And therefore, it is my privilege to pose a question to Mr. Karthik first. Uh, you know, the the topic today or the different ideas that we are discussing, we will be discussing about, would be about solutions and ideas for real-time fraud management. So, Mr. Karthik, if you were to put it in a nutshell, what seems to be the enormity of financial frauds for fintechs? Because the business is all about trust and maintaining integrity of their customers' financial and personally identifiable information. So, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Niranjan. So glad to be here in the DSCI forum again. If you see monetary-wise, as per RBI's reports, the total monetary value of bank frauds in India is about 1.5 lakh crores annually, right? I'm giving a rough number. Now the question is 1.5 lakh crores a large number? How large is it, right? Now 1.5 lakh crores is around 1% of our GDP. So that's the enormity of the number. If you take a country like UK, there the financial frauds is about 0.05% of their GDP, right? So we are talking about India being impacted almost 20 times more than a country like UK when it comes to financial frauds. And this is just the direct value, right? There are then the other indirect costs of frauds like legal recovery, investigation, loss of interest, all those things. Now, out of this, the cyber frauds itself, which probably most of the fintechs also experience, is actually quite small. It is about 100 crores, so it's actually a party amount if you compare to the wider 1.5 lakh crore number. But we need to be cognizant that these frauds, the cyber frauds, directly impact an individual. So while there are other kinds of banking frauds that happen, you have loan frauds, KYC frauds, things like fake notes, money laundering, all those things, and they do impact the society. They increase the cost of banking and all that. But the cyber, driven frauds impact the individual directly. So Niranjan, through our center, we do cybersecurity awareness campaigns, and when we do any post on social media, and I'm sure Rushi would agree to this, most of the response we get to these posts are, "Oh, I have been defrauded. I have become a victim to this kind of particular fraud. OTP scam or KYC scam, all those things, right?" And at times it becomes heartbreaking when you hear these stories. The simple people who have become victims have little recourse for justice, helpless most of the times, and we are helpless, to provide them justice. So, Mahatma Gandhi ji had said that when you frame a policy, the policies should reach the last person. However, here, when it comes to dealing with frauds in cyberspace, we were the last person. We are not able to reach most of the people. So that's the enormity of the frauds, if I can, you know, summarize.
Okay, so basis what you just told all of us and our viewers and listeners, taking a cue from what you just stated, I would want to pose my next question to Mr. Rushi. Basis the overall enormity of the fraudscape, if one were to call it, what are your thoughts about organizational structure for fraud management? How can we as a society, as a nation, address some of the very valid points that Karthik ji just spoke about? The common person should have recourse to justice, and it should be speedy one, because justice delayed is justice denied. How can we inspire that kind of confidence? What do you suppose needs to be done, in order, or how should the organizational structure be toward fraud management?
Thank you. So I'm glad DSCI invited me for the session. So I have been involved into with lot of fintechs, specifically for the fraud resolutions and tech-based solutions. But I'd like to show my screen for a while for just a minute.
Please do.
Yeah. So hope it's visible.
Yes, it is visible. Thank you.
Perfect. So only one slide. I just want to brief on the risk. So, I mean, before going to the organizational structure, we should know what are the risks that are there for the fintech companies. And since it's a semi-regulated domain, so these are all the practical and on-ground wisdom that has been obtained after in-depth exercise. So, number one is API extension. That is one of the fintech risk. So, what do you mean by API extension is because fintech rely heavily on the APIs. So these fraudsters sometimes they take API for a genuine purpose, and then they create another set of APIs behind their API. So in short, a merchant has registered as a payment. I mean, a merchant has registered for genuine business, but he's also sharing his APIs with someone. So API extension is an issue. Second one is API key. Again, there has been cases of sharing of the API key, and there is a misuse of the same. Second one is redirection. So let's say someone has applied for a payment gateway, and the parameters that come into the payment gateway come from an unintended location. So this is again a major issue that the payment gateway faces, and a risk. So, secondly, the PAPG merchants. I mean, there are a lot of payment aggregators and payment gateways. They are operating without the permission or without any approvals. Even normal current accounts may be used by payment aggregators by specific algorithm. So that's again an issue. Second one is biometrics. Are like there are a lot of fintech products like AEPS that are dependent on biometrics. Now there has been cases wherein people are told that there has been a government scheme and kindly give your biometric information. So once they give the biometric, then the money is debited from their account. So again, these biometric thefts. Shell companies, again, it's a major issues, like because for opening any account in fintech, you need a MCA registration certificate. So what happens is, if there is a fintech that has been registered by the X payment aggregator, so then in case he gets blacklisted, then he'll go and open an account in another payment aggregator. Now there is no that's the fintech hopping. So since there is no coordination between both the aggregators, and that's why they keep on continuing their operations. Next is cloud is extensively used. So sometimes from hostile nations, traffic comes and maybe it's stored outside as well. So that's again a data security issue. The local fraudsters, I call it desi hacking. Again, let's say BNPL is one of the fintech products, buy now pay later. So they take the AnyDesk remote access and apply for a buy now pay later loan, and then they transfer the money. So these are small issues, the local AnyDesk sharing thing. And last one is the information security risk. So information security, I mean, these are all the like from the RBI cybersecurity framework. So these are the top fintech risk that I see, I mean, I've seen based on the practical experience. Uh, Now, speaking about the organization structure, often what we see is the fraud team is different, vigilance team is different, and chief information security officer team is different. All, I mean, major and these are ideal condition. However, many of the fintechs may not be having even these teams, but the organizational structure should be all the three there is a fintech company, very nice fintech company, so their head is common. All the three departments, vigilance department, infosec department, and the uh, risk department, so all the three departments report to one officer. So ideally, and second part is, for developing a solution, the solution should be tech based solution. So if the department is same, then only you will be able to coordinate and create a solution. Let's say, for example, if there is any desk based fraud, so they will take remote access of your system. If infosec team knows it, then they can implement a code inside android which will detect the presence of any screen sharing software. So you can fix that security issue through a very small coding in the android application. So if there is a coordination between all the three teams, again, speaking about the organizational structure, there will be many law enforcement requests that will be made for particular merchants inside fintech. This request should go to each and every department, right from right from the onboarding team to the merchant KYC team to the transaction monitoring team. Everyone should evaluate why didn't it come up internally and why was it flagged from outside. So for any of the frauds that are being reported, that should be sent to each and every team along with the bank as well. So majorly fintechs don't inform their banks in the sense underlying bank where they have the nodal account about the frauds. So again, if there is a coordination between their nodal account holding bank as well, then that would be the best organization structure that could be created.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, splendid. Thanks, Rushiji. So my next question would be to Mr. Sudeep. Basis what our other two, eminent panelists expressed before, and taking a cue from what Mr. Rushi just stated, the 8 points that he made, the top risks faced by fintechs. So how how would you, as a stalwart, given your background and experience, how do you think IT can help fintechs build platforms on which cyber frauds can become very difficult to perpetrate?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Niranjanji. And really happy to be a part of this discussion and share my thoughts on this. Uh, well, fintechs would need IT. IT is the foundation on which all of these things are happening. And of course, the banking system is the other ingredient part of it. Now, fraud would happen or not happen. It's still a question mark in terms of when. But when it comes to IT, the bugs are going to happen in the next 2 seconds and it is going to keep coming, right? As a statistically, we know that our IT systems are getting bugged on a continuous basis, which means that kind of the fraud that can get perpetrated using IT system vulnerabilities is a reality which I don't have to wait for. Password hacking will happen or not is a question mark. If I have good practices, I my password hacking most probably will not happen. But there is no question mark in the sense that my software will become vulnerable or not, right? The attack surface of any fintech organization from a services perspective or an IT infrastructure perspective is exposed to the internet, and on the internet we are getting bombarded. That's a reality, and that's not a question mark behind it. And hence, if we take that as a cue, if I know that there is a problem that is happening as of right now and which I have to fix in the next 5 hours or 10 hours, that is where I feel, a basic uh, activity that IT teams can do is make sure all those known problems are solved across the entire infrastructure that is supporting this service that I am delivering through my fintech organization, right? Problem is when we are using cloud and we are using our on-prem and we are using our vendor systems, our third-party vendor systems, we don't even know what is the attack surface. So the IT systems across this attack surface, the vulnerabilities that are present across this IT surface. Rushi ji talked about API key, and that's more of a design problem. Few software is more susceptible to API key stealing, and few of them are less. If you make it more strong, well, it will become unusable. If you make it less, it becomes more prone to fraud, right? So all those balances around IT risks, etc., is something that is overwhelming for almost all organizations. There are too many vulnerabilities, right?
Okay.
So as a IT person, prioritization, we know that prioritization is a very important criteria. But in our world now, we are seeing that prioritization based upon today is also not sufficient. We have to really prioritize for what might happen tomorrow. And over the last 20 years, prediction of vulnerabilities has become almost a science now. I most probably will be able to predict which software in what time period most probably will be the vehicle for the next attack, right? So
Indeed.
visibility of vulnerabilities, prioritization of vulnerabilities, and the lastly, the IT team can really help is give assurance in terms of metrics of how well you are prepared for my real-time fraud detection. If I have not done my strong foundation of visibility and prioritization, the metrics, the real-time fraud detection or stopping will not happen. And to make sure that we are always on track, metrics becomes a very important aspect to be, to be brought out from the IT team. And in all of these, there are approaches that are well proven. It's just that we are so focused right now on delivering the service that the basics of cyber fraud prevention around the platform gets backstage.
Often gets sidelined or
Sideline.
ignored for the moment. It loses
Yeah.
the focus on that. And because willy-nilly, there is an environment or an opportunity created, and therefore cyber frauds happen. Mr. Karthik, may I ask you, what are the challenges that law enforcement agencies face while handling cyber financial frauds?
Yeah, so I think there are a few of them. One is the technical expertise itself, right? So technology is changing so rapidly. It becomes difficult for law enforcement agencies to catch up with the latest trends, whereas the fraudsters always, are on the cutting edge of technology. And this itself can be, if you dig deep, it can be kind of unbundled into further other issues in terms of how do we incentivize, law enforcement agencies to keep themselves updated. How do we, get expertise from market, all those other things, right? But we should be cognizant that technology is going to remain this way even for the future. We were talking of cyber attacks through phishing, cyber attacks through ransomware. Then we have cyber frauds done through say cryptocurrencies. Nowadays we have frauds done through NFTs. This keeps on changing, and you can imagine the scale of challenge in getting law enforcement agencies to keep themselves updated on what's happening in the latest in technology, through all of this. Second is the lack of jurisdiction, or the jurisdictional challenges which they face. Cyber attacks, cyber frauds, by its nature, is remote, right? So the person who is committing the fraud is in a different location, and the victims are in a different location. This can be international, but even if we don't go there, because international has its own challenges, you need to have mutual legal assistant treaties, and all those things with different countries. That's a bigger problem to solve. But even within the country, when you have interstate cyber frauds, and most of them are tend to be interstate,
Yeah.
the the victim is in one particular jurisdiction, so the onus of investigating the crime becomes becomes the responsibility of the police in that jurisdiction, whereas the perpetrator is in a different jurisdiction, and the perpetrator probably has victims across multiple jurisdictions, right? Somebody sitting in one state can have victims in different states. Now, just imagine the overhead involved for the police in one state to send a personnel to the other state if they come to know where the location of the fraudster is. Send somebody to that other state. The logistics involved in it, the coordination required, etc. And then just imagine if there are multiple state police who are trying to do the same thing because there are victims across different states, right? So this jurisdictional challenge becomes a huge constraint for law enforcement.
Appreciate
And the
it.
third is lack of technology platforms as well, right? So uh, if you think of it, for a lot of these challenges, there are technology solutions today, but we don't have a technology platform which can be used by all the stakeholders involved in the ecosystem, whether it is banks or fintechs, payment gateways, police, anybody else, right? Telecoms, all these are stakeholders, and we don't have a platform wherein all these people can come together and share information. Rushi mentioned about how a person with a fraud KYC perpetrates a fraud with one fintech, and then he can do the same thing with another fintech because there's no sharing of information that is happening. So in a nutshell, I would say, these three, the lack of technology expertise, jurisdictional challenges, and lack of technology platforms for information sharing and coordination.
Okay, noted well. Mr. Rushi, do you have anything to add to what Karthik ji just stated?
Yeah, so I would second Karthik on all the points. I mean, these are the real world challenges that we face. Now, I'll add two more points. One is the renting of the fintech infrastructure. So, what do you mean by renting? Is that there will be a payment gateway or there will be a payment aggregator account that will be opened in the name of any random poor person, and that will be used by someone from sitting from out of India, for example. So in that case, the issue would be that even if the law enforcement is catching the person, it will yield no result because that he is not the actual person. He has just taken 2% or 3% for renting his payment gateway or renting his payment aggregator infrastructure. So the original person does not get caught, and it's a mules who will get caught. So that is one issue. And second issue is the fintech companies are innovating so fast that it is difficult even for technical people to be in tune with those developments. So let's say, for example, recently there was an issue of ghost loans. Now ghost loans was very, I mean, it was a normal it's a basic thing, but even people were not aware about it. And now once you ask any law enforcement agency on these kind of products, let's say buy now pay later, BNPL, they won't be aware, like, okay, these are also the products that exist in the market. So ultimately, lack of that particular thing. And last one is the data issue. That, I mean, many times, since these are not regulated entities, there are not logs. I mean, they don't store logs many a times. So since they have not been told, so let's say in bank they have a good practice of digital forensic readiness assessment, DFRA they tell it. So in DFRA they mandate the banks to store the logs for 1 year or 2 year based on the criticality. But if you come to, let's say, fintechs, no one has told them to store the logs. So sometimes if you're asking for login log of logs or even transaction logs, they don't have anything available with them. Because, I mean, and they ask that, okay, I mean, is it really needed? And some fintechs are very small, so small that like 2 people, 3 people, they are running the company. So hardly, I mean, they don't have any controls and any system in place to log these activities. So yeah, without logs there is no investigation. So these are some of the challenges I would like to add that are there, and yeah, it has been increasing rampantly.
Right, Mr. Rushi. So these exposures keep happening all the time, despite whatever infra, whatever other protective investments that you may make. So when we read about such exposures or such incidents, uh, Mr. Sudeep, we keep hearing about these terms such as indicators of exposure and indicators of attack. So, what other kind of indicators do you think enterprises should invest in to reduce or make it really, really difficult for the bad guys, and for cyber frauds from happening? What can be done to disrupt the so-called kill chain?
I think you're on mute, Sudeep.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, thank you. Um, yeah, so and the kill chain is quite long. We've been using this word, this phrase kill chain for quite some time now. Uh, and we do know that in this kill chain, the real-time fraud management is what happens the rest. Like all the ingredients for fraud to happen has already been built into this entire services. Now we are trying to make sure that if there is a problem, I'm able to investigate the problem quickly. For example, law enforcement, or I'm able to detect the law using the real-time fraud management, and so on and so forth. The indicators of attack really is in this space, right? Things are happening. Uh, I'm not audible. Sorry.
Nope, you're audible, perfectly fine.
Okay, Niranjan ji was mentioning something. Okay, um, so the indicators of attack is really what we term in our thing is after the situation has already gone bad, right? The new, the new or not new really, it's always been there. The stitch in time saves rupees 9, right? So the idea of handling cyber frauds during the development stage, during the build stage, is the newer focuses that we are seeing. We put turning them as shift left or DevOps supported by security, right? As Rushi mentioned, we are innovating fast, and they are using IT to innovate fast. So when we are building or designing these solutions, if we are alerted at that point of time that we are not following the basics, a part of that kill chain gets broken, right? Again, it's a long chain, but a part of it gets broken and at a much lesser cost, right? So what we are doing now, what we are seeing a lot of organizations is making sure that the ideas of security is imprinted into the design right from the coding stage to the build stage. And because this is happening very quickly and we are making changes, so it has to also be re-verified during the run stage, right? Because what we built may not actually be running at the end, because there are so many third party systems coming and helping in the middle. So all this orchestration that we are doing right from the stage where the coder is building out the containers to the stage where I'm running the applications, we need to be putting in our monitors and our policy enforcers, and one point which I loved when Karthik talked about the collaboration, not only at the law enforcement or the thing, but even at the IT side. Each of these phases really need to be collaborating with each other. What the developer intends to do and what the SecOps guy intends to do should be collaborating with each other. And there's technologies which can really help us do that. So while the indicators of attack and the indicators of exposures have been around for us a long time, for a fairly long time, we also had the concept of zero trust and shift left, but they are becoming more and more applicable to the idea of developing security at a lower cost and making sure that it is equally applied across all the layers of IT in that kill chain, Niranjanji.
So, uh, am I audible to the rest of the team here?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Thanks. So my next question will be to Mr. Karthik. Uh, what I would like to ask you on behalf of all of us here is that what do you think can be done to foster trust in digital financial transactions and also as a corollary to strengthen law enforcement?
Yeah. Sure. So one is, we need to make it easy for people to establish their digital identity. This will help the fintechs in, simplifying KYC, ensuring the integrity of the KYC process, etc. Sometime back, the government had said that if you want to get a SIM card, you have to, get it through Aadhaar verification. Uh, this was then later struck down by the Supreme Court as not proportionate to the problem. However, what we can look at is can we make Aadhaar verified SIM card optional to people, and then those can be used for doing for establishing digital identity, right? That's just one thought, but the overall point I wanted to make is around making it easy for people to establish digital identity. That's one. Second is we need to update our legal framework. So our legal framework is based on the assumption that crimes are committed with some kind of physical proximity, right? So if I'm committing a crime, I will be close to where the victim is. However, cyber, it's totally not the case. So the jurisdictional constraints that we are imposing through our through our legal framework is impeding the ability of law enforcement to bring the culprits to justice. Uh, Third, I would say is we also need to update the operating model of the law enforcement agencies for them to leverage and get expertise from the market, because technology is such a rapidly changing domain that unless the law enforcement agencies get the right technical experts from the market and do this on a regular continuous basis, they will always be kind of left behind. And last, I would say is this whole trinity of law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, and judges. All of them need to be trained in technology, because not just law enforcement agencies, unless the prosecutors and judges also have the appreciation of technology, it's going to be challenging still. Maybe we can even look for establishing a technical cadre for these roles, right? So I would say these are some of the ways we can look at fostering digital trust and strengthening law enforcement agencies' capabilities.
Okay, so taking a cue from where you ended, Karthik ji, I would like to ask Rushi ji about his thoughts on implementing modern day fraud risk management and the relevance that ought to be accorded to it.
So, see, modern day fraud management, I mean, as fintech grows, it's an evolving uh, domain. And it's, I would like to put it differently from information security or cyber security, because systems are safe, systems are hardened, everything is properly patched and fixed. Still, there are huge number of frauds that take place. So one solution or one thing I have in my mind is, if there is a centralized fraud management system, like uh, like uh, I mean, I'll compare it with a user agent that is being placed for any for a DLP, for example. So if this particular agent or a small piece of SDK or a small piece of software, if that is being placed in each and every financial system, each and every fintech companies or each and every banks, and all those agents will communicate to a central body, which is the fraud management repository, then the dependency on the companies for reporting the frauds or for fraud detection, that will be nullified. So let's say, for example, if there is a payment aggregator, and if he is processing 1 crore transaction in a single day suddenly, okay, Now, in this case, there will be an automatic alert that will be sent to the central parent body or central organization automatically from that fintech company, so that he cannot hide it. And this should be compulsory. I mean, the transaction monitoring or that, and this will automatically even get flagged to the regulators. It will get flagged to the ministry who is handling this, and the local law enforcement agency where that company is residing. If this solution is there, which is implemented,
So,
then I think that can be
so sir, you are saying there should not just be an oversight, but immediate visibility and transparency accorded to a central body who may even intervene, not
exactly.
not just notified about it, but who may actually do something then and there to probably nip the thing in the bud and forestall future attempts.
Yes.
Excellent. So, again, turning to Sudeep ji, sir, what, in your opinion, are the platform risks and approaches to disrupt the fraud chain for fintechs?
Yeah, in our world, the platform is the one which was built first, the Windows boxes, and in the latest ones, the serverless infrastructure. The entire range of platforms are still very much in use by all the fintech systems, right? All the legacy systems are there, the newer systems are there, and each one of them poses different issues, right? Uh, but in the IT system, there is one thing that we are very, very privileged. We can still go ahead and say this risks are acceptable, and we will just accept risks. A law enforcement guy cannot simply say, "I'll not handle this case," or "I'll focus my." But in the IT systems, we do have that. We do have that privilege to do risk management and focus on things which are more important in that particular kill chain, right? Statistically, we see it, of a breach happens on around 3% of vulnerabilities that are reported, right? So if I in today's in my platform today, if there are 100 vulnerabilities, there is a very, very high chance that 97 of them will not even impact any of my systems. In terms of when a breach happens, the breach would be focusing on top three, and the otherness, so we can do our risk management. So from a platform, or a attack surface across these platforms, the importance of risk management, of focusing on the top 3%, top 5%, makes it a manageable issue, right? So if we really can't solve the big problems of jurisdiction of this thing, at least we can minimize by doing what is possible, which is focusing on the IT risks and the platform risks, which many a times is the base on which things are happening. For example, malware. Most of these malwares use a very specific item, like the AD, to go ahead and perpetrate. Right now, if I know for sure that the AD is something that is going to get used, why can't I simply focus on that? Right. Again, there is no concept. I'll be disagreeing with Mr. Rushi there, saying that I have a hardened hardened system, fully patched, pretty much. That almost never happens. While we report that it is all good, if I am fully patched today, tomorrow I'll be off track because a new vulnerability got things. But that's a rolling issue that is there. But practically, yes, I'm hardened, I'm patched. Only if I focus on that manageable number of risks, which is top 3% patches that has to be applied today, right? Or the top system that gets attacked,
Okay.
which is my
So,
biometric system,
So,
maybe, and
sir,
also everything.
apologies for the intrusion, Sudeep ji, but we have just under a couple of minutes left into the interaction. So, my last question, and please be brief, Rishi ji, because then we will have a minute or so left to handle any questions from audience very, very quickly. So, again, apologies for this
No problem.
shortcut. But then, what are your thoughts about the ownership of frauds in fintechs, Rishiji? Very briefly.
Yeah, so as per my personal view, since fintech operate on the banks, So the ownership of the fraud should be with the fintech themselves. They should not be claiming that we are just a platform provider. Since you have provided platform, you are the owner. So yeah, that's my
And what
personal
if they
thoughts.
say, and what if they were to say, which is a usual plea, that, oh, we are also the victims being a part of the
Yes.
ecosystem? So, how would you counter that?
So in that case, I would counter that it since it was your platform, it was your responsibility to have fraud risk management implemented properly, and there was a breach. So yes, you are responsible.
Yes, because you caused vulnerabilities to be exploited by the bad actors. You did not have enough
Correct.
defenses, so yeah, I mean, that is how it ought to be. But is that a practicality? Okay.
Yes, I mean there are some fintechs who take the ownership and who have strengthened that system and cleaned that system. I mean, very well established. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, my dear eminent panelists. I have summarized your thoughts, but I think I just have another 15 seconds to conclude, so I wouldn't be able to actually recapitulate those. But thank you. I think our viewers, our listeners were paying very rapt attention. I'm grateful, I'm thankful that all of you spared time and took the initiative to step out of your highly occupied and busy schedules, uh, and for lending your support to this event by expressing your thoughts. Highly appreciated. Thank you for your cooperation. And again, we all here are highly indebted. I probably have grown a bit more wiser than what I would have imagined myself to be. So thank you so much. Thank you, Manjeshji, also for an immaculate coordination. Thanks,
Sir, actually, we
technical.
have a couple of questions from the audience also. So we have
Okay,
time, like 10 or 5
excellent.
minutes. So one of the questions from the audience is optimization model of cross-border e-commerce payment security by blockchain finance.
Who amongst our panelists would like to take a crack at this? It's exciting and it's vast.
I think I can start with. Can you repeat the 5 words? Optimization of cross-border transaction through blockchain finance, right?
Optimization model of cross-border e-commerce payment security by blockchain finance.
See, blockchain again, there is an issue with the nodes. I mean, recently we have seen some of the DeFi exchanges. I was involved in some so decentralized finance. So again, that's a cross-border payment kind of system. But you need a strong and robust for blockchain also system like Reserve Bank of India, like whose guidelines are extremely pinpointed, robust, and that thing. Now, blockchain, if you see, it's just developing. Even there are some platform level vulnerabilities. Let's say in Solidity, there were many issues that were found. So I think we should basically fix the underlying infrastructure. I mean, it's not a tried and tested infra as we can see in terms of the other normal platforms. So once we fix that, then we can go with the higher implementations of uh, cross-border and implementations.
So we have one more question. So how security awareness can be widespread among the rural population who aren't good with interpreting advisories in international language?
Yeah, maybe I
And
can
although
take it.
moderator, I will just want to express a few of my thoughts here, and then the distinguished panelists can also lend some flavor to this. India is a vast country, and obviously we have challenges, because in different regions we speak different languages. Not everybody would be conversant with Hindi and or English. And obviously, when even OTT contents are showing subtitles in regional contents or voiceovers in regional languages and dialects, it means they appreciate the value and the vast potential that our population in different states hold for them. Coming back to the issue at hand, therefore, all the communication ought to be developed with a regional flavor. and this can be pushed. In fact, the regulator is pushing for it. No, there are these campaigns such as RBI Kehta Hai, and different banks in different states that they operate or cities that they operate are lending a regional flavor to it so that the messaging is apt and appropriate for the audience at hand. Because what may be befitting uh, an English speaking populace may not be very appropriate or will be appreciated or understood uh, by everybody else. So I think a focus on regional education or re-education, reiteration of certain basic tenets of security, because a learned friend of mine always says that the biggest problem is in security is user behavior. People either get tempted or coerced or threatened to do what they do, and they end up compromising their own security. So the emphasis and the focus ought to be getting things across in a manner that people and segments understand. So your approach toward the elderly ought to be different. It ought to be very simple, even simplistic, so to say. You can't use technobabble and jargon while talking to them, whereas you could use channels such as Twitter and other social media when you focus on the younger people. So it has to be a blended approach, is what I will say. However, I think I have already exceeded my brief, and I would invite my eminent panelists to also share their thoughts here.
Yeah, so I think all fantastic points made by Niranjan, and I would like to emphasize again on the importance of doing security awareness campaigns in regional languages, and not just regional languages, in the regional specific uh, context, right? Using the local cultural context, using the local flavors. I think the security awareness campaigns need to be conducted. Our awareness campaigns that we do through CySecK is taking the same approach. So we all our awareness campaigns are bilingual. So we do it in English as well as in Kannada as a center of excellence in Karnataka, right? At the same time, I would also say that awareness campaigns is a hygiene factor. It's a necessary but not sufficient factor. While we should be doing awareness campaigns, we should be looking at making our awareness campaigns more effective. We should be looking at scaling up of our awareness campaigns and all that. We should also be cognizant that there are going to be vulnerable people. You know, people, because people tend to trust others. People tend to lag. Majority of people will be lagging behind in terms of their understanding of technology, all those things, right? So that's why it's important that while awareness campaigns are conducted and done, the we should not rely on only that when it comes to protecting people, and hence the discussion we had around strengthening law enforcement agencies, right? So that is really important, and that is a key for improving the security in cyberspace, I would say.
Okay, so we have three questions from cryptocurrency part. So, what is the future of the currency, and if government of India looking forward to regulate cryptocurrency? And third question is, how would be the investor perspective if government of India regulate cryptocurrency?
I think that would not be a relevant question for the session because we already have
Yeah.
a on crypto, right? So
Yeah. So the last one more question would be how NBFC platforms are secure.
Well, I guess that's a very generic things. How are they secured? And I think we talked about this in that entire thing. There's platform risks, there's environmental risk, there is people risk, there is the regulatory risk. I think they are secure. Any not no different from the banks or the regulators. I think we are all on the same boat as far as cyber security is concerned. The problems that an NBFC would face would be a little contextualized, maybe, but it would having the same tenets that the bigger banks or the regulators or people would be feeling. And that is how I would see things.
Yeah,
I
so
think
the good
Rushi.
thing is, now NBFCs are, RBI has brought NBFCs into, provided a cybersecurity framework for them as well. So
Correct.
I'm sure, they are also, strengthening their cybersecurity posture.
And even RBI's action is very prompt. Today only there were some 4 to 5 licenses that were cancelled for NBFCs that were not dealing properly, and they were into the loan application related harassments. So, uh, yep.
Yeah.
And there is one more question. I think it was not phrased correctly. I mean, what is the current trend in cyberspace? I guess
Sorry, current.
current trend in cyberspace in terms of financial, I guess. So maybe
Now, I see the other question which looks much better, and I would like to give a quick shot to that. What is manageable number of risk? What is calculated risk? That's one of the things that we IT guys keep love talking about, because there's a whole bunch of no right answer and no wrong answer in that particular space, right? But one fact which remains from the risk perspective is that there are certain risks which are proven. We know they are a problem. For example, ransomware is a problem. There is no running away from that fact that there is not going to be a ransomware. Or for that matter, that the foreign governments are not going to come and bombard your servers. These things would keep happening. And if we really talk about what is a manageable number of risk, it's the risks which will impact you, not the complete set of risks. And on the statistics that, so Tenable being a cyber exposure company, what we have zeroed down is that number 3%. We think from an IT risk perspective, not the operational risk and the banking risk and all. From an IT risk perspective, we do know that what if you have counted 100 risks which are impactful in your thing, take the top 3% and solve them, you'll be in a much better position in terms of impact of a breach. So if you ask us as a cyber exposure company, I'll say 3% is a manageable number of risks.
so. There is one more question. So there are cases where fintech fault is laid on the customers since these fintechs are not governed by the central authority due to their modern architecture. So is there any way to tackle it or do we have any framework?
No, I don't think fintech fault would be laid on the customer, because ultimately, see, fintechs are nothing but technologies that work on top of a bank or NBFC, right? So, if that is happening, then you can connect on RBI such a portal. That is a very nice way to reach out to Reserve Bank of India on Sachet, and find out the underlying bank which the fintech uses the platform, and then that bank can be reached out to get the
The
solution.
query redress.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because in this day and age of open banking, whereas there is a lot of Philip, and an advantage for a fintech to do pure play technological wizardry, if we were to call it that. But at underpinning that, at the foundation of that is always a bank,
Hmm.
and therefore banks are governed by RBI, and therefore a fintech cannot disassociate themselves from the acts or omissions They
Again, there
can't.
is a question of liability. Who
Just
is liable?
yeah, walk away with the cream and say, hey, sorry. If there's any loss or liability, that's not mine. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess you can never fault the architecture for that. I mean, due to their modern architecture, it can never be a bypass statement for anything.
So I think that's all. So so it was a wonderful panel discussion. So I thank all the panelists and the moderator for sharing your thoughts. I thank you once, one and all.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Mangesh.
much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Niranjan.
so much. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you, everybody, for their help, cooperation, and involvement.
Thank you, Niranjan.